You know about QAnon. Is there anything you can tell us that I don't know?
JFK Jr. is still alive.
What?
This guy is always behind Trump at the rallies.
So you're saying JFK Jr. is still alive and spending his time in the background at Trump rallies? Well, I mean, I'm feeling the decline of democracy first, and so there's a chance there it comes back, you know? What I am definitely feeling is it's time to hedge our bets. You know, 4 years ago, everybody was pretty cocky and pretty confident. I will say the one thing I didn't have was context. See just how many folks in this country, I met most of them who were voting for Trump, but it turns out there were even more beyond that. And so I think we were pretty surprised on election day. I think who knows what's going to happen this election day. I do think there's going to be some shenanigans afoot. So that is what I'm prepping for. If I had to put money down right now, I wouldn't put it on a winner, but I'd put it on the Mueller report part 2. We're going to get somebody coming out and ahead of the game telling everybody what happened at the election before we actually know. And I think that's going to make for a real fun time in American culture.
I just hope it's not a close election. I just hope that, this is terrible to say, I hope that whoever wins big so that there's less of a dispute from November through Martin Luther King weekend on who's the real winner and counting the extra ballots and all of the extra chaos and turmoil that's going to happen on the other side of that. I do think that, you know, if Biden is the winner, we're going to be in a world of shit for another 2 or 3 more months. Because, you know, I think Trump has already shown that he's not going to go quietly and it's not going to be a smooth transition of power. So, you know, I'm as stressed about that as I am the actual outcome of the election itself.
And that's the upside.
That's best case scenario.
Yeah, we might not know the winner for months, but I could call the loser right now.
I think I'm a pretty cynical guy with everything, but even I get the sense, especially this last month after the 2 presidential debates, or 1 debate and 1 town hall, I feel like I feel in the energy, my vibe of America is that we are like 5% smarter than the same time 4 years ago. There's this little bit more of, we get that Twitter is evil. We get that we can ignore the noise just like 1 or 2% better than before. You know, we're still very much a victim of it, but I think there's a general sense of a little bit more of like, oh, fighting with people, fighting with foreign government agent bots who are trying to sow discord and spread misinformation to undermine democracy is not a productive use of our time. And I think more people have mobilized this election. I can feel the mobilization personally, because a lot of communities reach out to me more. I think this to kind of like be a part of whatever they're doing. They're trying to organize voters and get the word out and get to groups that didn't vote last time. So I feel like there's a little bit of a cause for more optimism this time as opposed to before. And this is coming from someone who's extremely cynical about everything.
Why are some states like Texas making it so hard for people to vote by mail?
I think there's no other explanation other than they're worried about how their own voters are going to vote.
Makes perfect sense. The people in charge of voting, making sure that people can't vote. Feels very American to me.
I would be much more disappointed because I think we have seen what has happened in the last 4 years, and it feels like we've reached sort of an all-time low and that this can't go on anymore. So yes, I would be much more disturbed if this were to carry on. But I'm cautiously optimistic because I think we all learned 4 years ago, like I was completely blindsided. I think so many of us were completely blindsided, and we were sort of drinking shots of bourbon in the edit. Like I remember sitting with Jordan just like, sorry, I'm throwing you under the bus. He can drink like a champ.
I haven't stopped since that night.
Yeah, he really hasn't. And I don't want to be like crying in my apartment by myself, taking shots. Like it's not quite the same as all sitting together. So hopefully we're popping champagne over Zoom.
You make a good point, Desi. I do think it's just not as fun to drink alone in a pandemic. So I mean, we're really hoping democracy gets saved.
That's what this is. It all comes down to that.
I think Desi makes actually a great point. I remember 4 years ago on the road, say what you will about Donald Trump 4 years ago, but he was the outsider. He was the underdog. And if you were somebody who wanted to vote against the status quo, that was Donald Trump. And as odd as it seems, a billionaire reality TV star person as the underdog in election, a lot of people connected with that because they didn't like politics at all. And Hillary Clinton was seen as the incumbent, and Americans like to vote out an incumbent. We get tired of it because 8 years isn't fast enough for them to get shit done in the way that we want it done. So I do think when I look at it now, Trump doesn't have that anymore. And I think you can't write off, oh, he just says those things. When he gets in office, he'll actually do something different. We know who he is. It's been revealed. And so my disappointment at this election will be based because you could hide behind an argument of not knowing better 4 years ago. Now you know. And that, I think, puts
all of them know, though? They all know.
I think they have the choice to not know. I think you have to actively not know now.
Okay. Because he caught COVID and pulled up in Florida, and it was a sellout. And people was like, yeah, let's go catch COVID with the president. High five the governor. Like, there's some that still just knowingly don't want to know. And that makes me sad.
Yeah.
I think Penn State. I think a lot about Penn State. I think if I was a Penn State football fan and all the Joe Paterno stuff hit, I would do everything in my right mind to not think Joe Paterno was a bad dude. Because that's my team and I already bought all the hats. And so I think
by the way. Jordan, go for it, sorry.
No, you wanted to say something about Penn State football. What were you saying, Ronny?
I was going to discuss one of the plays that I was going to say, but by the way, Mara, I feel like I'm asking the rest of you guys because you're asking us these questions, and I feel like I do have an opinion on it, but I also feel like it's changing every 5 minutes. You know what I mean? So you happen to ask me about what I feel about election right now, and I feel like 2% smarter. If you ask me next week, it could change. And I think that's kind of like the story of this year or the last 4 years is that things seem to be changing very rapidly. You know, the situation, the vibe of the country. You know, one second he'll be doing really well, you know, because of something that happened, and then 1 second he'll be doing really bad. So it's really hard we have to discuss our feelings in real time without having this like overarching like this is what's happening, this is what's going to happen. So yeah, there's still a lot of unpredictability.
I don't trust none of these voters. I don't know what's going to happen. Damn lady at the Trump town hall who says she's voting for Biden called Trump handsome to his face. So it's like, what are you voting on? His smile or all of the horrible... I'm sorry, Mara.
I was just thinking about, you know, remember it used to be like, who would you want to have a beer with? Like, that's not even, you know what I mean? Like,
what is that anymore?
The person without coronavirus.
Who do you want to not catch COVID from? Like,
but it does, like, I was watching your thing, Jordan, where you were in Harrisburg, and I was like, what are these people going to do if their guy loses? Do they all just get behind Lindsey Graham? Or like, where does that energy go?
I don't think it's going to get behind Lindsey Graham. As compelling a character as he is, there's, I feel like he doesn't have the weight that Donald Trump had. I think I empathize with people who have attached their wagons to that Trump train. And I think, like, you know, again, 4 years ago, not only was it the biggest show in town, but also he spoke to somebody who was an underdog. And we've let go the idea that this is an interview for the highest political job in the land. And now it's just who draws the biggest crowds. I'd like to think with the dissipation of that interest, we can actually look at this and make it boring again. Like for some reason, it's like we should be talking about the most boring things in the land. How are we saving people from a virus that's getting across the land? Can somebody talk about healthcare? Can somebody talk about gerrymandering? Can we talk about the Electoral College? Instead, everybody's like, I don't know. You know who had the most signs out? Oh, I don't know. But everybody showed up here. It's like, I don't care if suddenly less people are interested in politics, because they aren't interested in politics, they're interested in parades. And I think if we can disconnect that from policy, then maybe people can get shit done.
Maybe there should just only be certain voters every year. Like you have to take a vote test or some shit. Maybe you get to...
Roy, I think we tried that
once.
Roy, that America had that for a while, and it wasn't the most appropriate handling of the electorate.
Listen, I have some great ideas. We got it. Everything's a remake. So let's just bring back, some of that.
Monica, what advice would you give to Biden and Kamala to ensure that they lock up this election?
Be true to your word.
Wait, hang on. Don't tell me. Tell Biden. Don't tell me. Tell Biden.
If I interviewed Trump, well, first, would I? Answer, yes. Second answer, what would the approach be? The approach would be to constantly re-ask the questions that he maneuvers around within his answers. Trump repeatedly will swerve around a question. The fact that Savannah Guthrie had to re-ask him 2 or 3 questions from the first debate means that somebody's not sitting him down and going, hey, focus. Would you not do this? Would you do? There was someone in the town hall that was asking him about waiving the pre-existing conditions requirements for whatever the hell Trump care is going to be. And he slithered his way out of that answer without ever answering the question. My Trump interview would just be me re-asking questions that he tries to maneuver his way around and out of.
Yeah, I think he's one of the best counterpunchers of all time. So I think it's pretty naive for me to go like, I'm going to nail this guy when all these people have tried to nail him. And quite frankly, it doesn't even matter if you nail him because people have kind of, I think Jonathan Swift did a great interview with him, Guthrie obviously as well. The typical way you would approach it would be you do a few good men, which is you let him, you cross-examine him, you let him basically hoist himself up, right, on his own thing, but it doesn't work. So, man, I don't know. I mean, that is the question that 4 years of the American media cycle has been unable to answer. How do you effectively interview this guy,
I think that Axios interview was the best interview I've seen, and I think it's because of these reasons. I think Roy is 100% right. I wouldn't want to be funny with Donald Trump. You just need to ask a follow-up. I would continually ask, can you explain that? Can you explain that? But how? Like, he's like being in a scene with a bad improviser. Like, stuff that doesn't work, he throws away and he just keeps searching for something else. And like, you're lost in the last weird synapse that popped inside his Adderall addicted head. And so you're like, yeah, but can we go back to that first thing? And can you explain it? He can't explain it. He withers under follow-up and he just flails. And I think we're also hampered. We're hampered in by like a media cycle where like Samantha Guthrie's like, I got 12 minutes. Shoot, I got to go to the commercial break. It's like, can you imagine actually getting an answer from Donald Trump where you didn't have to worry about a time limit, which we should have at some point? We should be like, no, I actually need an answer. You didn't answer when your last negative test was. That's not good enough for us. You need to answer that. And guess what? We're waiting on a commercial for Chevy trucks. No, I'm waiting on an answer for if you had COVID during the last debate. And luckily he runs out the clock on every answer. And you just got to follow up.
And I think if I can put myself in the mind of maybe his supporters, it's like we want this like mea culpa moment where we like nail him and then he goes like, you know what, I didn't have an answer, but you're not going to get that. So my thing is like, yeah, you can, I guess it would be nice to have a Jonathan Swift style interview. More of those would be good. But I think if we're talking about results, you want to convince people who still like him that that's happening, because you, as in talk to people who for some reason are on the fence or maybe even support him, who are able to have a reasonable conversation and go like, hey, listen, this guy doesn't have a plan. It's not even, this is beyond politics. This is about competency versus incompetency.
Maybe it's a matter of like a long game plan where the show sends me to go get a job at Fox News and I get the job and then I pose as a Fox News reporter, go in and build up his ego and then sneak attack him. But we probably would have had to have prepared for that a long time ago.
Desi, that
would
idea.
That would be.
That's a great idea.
I feel like that potentially could be a way in.
But are you confident if you join Fox News that you wouldn't be turned?
I can't make any promises. I don't know. It's a very powerful machine.
Well, in that case, then send me.
Desi, I'm pulling you out.
You'd have to rescue me.
You're too deep. You're too deep. You're laughing at Gutfeld's jokes. You're in too deep.
Oh, God damn, it's not funny. Yeah.
I think it is time for you to come out and publicly disavow gender reveal parties.
Oh, I've definitely already said that, and people should definitely stop doing that.
Oh, you said that already. Well, that's good. I'm glad I got through to you.
Oh, I've publicly disavowed gender reveal parties for quite some time now. About a year. I've been campaigning against them.
I don't know if there's ever going to be one magic journalist or channel that will flip someone or change someone's perspective per se, but I think that you're better off if you have information from multiple sources. Like in starting at the Daily Show, that was one of the things, like, I don't know if y'all did this, but when I had to audition, like I was watching like Al Jazeera America, BBC Two, like I must know all the news. And you start, because before that, you know, I was a CNN and an MSNBC guy. And you start watching all these different places, and a lot of them tend to have a lot of the same tendencies. And so that's why, you know, at the Daily Show, we try our best to make sure that there's some impartiality to what we're covering, especially with the field pieces, because these issues that are partisan at the end of the day, they affect all Americans, no matter who you vote for. So I think it's very important for people to have that view. I don't know how you take the person who only consumes one news source and you show them something that is the complete polar opposite. I don't know if you're going to necessarily get levity from those people, because those people, I think, are already too far gone, you know, and that's left and right wing.
You definitely need to look at other news sources. I think it's definitely good to get out of your bubble. I myself, over the last year, have definitely been getting out of my bubble in a bad way. A lot of the times I don't like what I'm seeing outside it. I think we all have stories of friends or family on social media who are in their own bubble. And then when the bubbles clash, it's always like, whoa, what is going on? Like, how did they even believe this? So it's definitely important. Another thing is also that these are algorithms, you know, that we are, you know, it's kind of being forced upon you to, it's been playing into the way our brains have evolved. That there's tech companies as well that are kind of partially responsible for the division that's happening a little bit, you know, because news in foreign countries like BBC is, when they report a headline, it's like, here's the headline, here's the news. When we do in America, it's like, oh my God, this thing and Trump and blah, 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 and everyone just loses their mind a little bit. And I think we're still developing the antibodies to deal with the internet in 2020 in America. And so I think the older generation probably doesn't possess that kind of critical thinking when it comes to articles. And I think the younger generation, we've kind of grown up with it a little bit more. So we have a little bit more, a little bit more discerning when we see a headline.
I think we're so entertainment focused. We don't know the difference between news and editorial. I do think that's where, of course, understand and watch the Daily Show, watch other news sources. We are not a news source. And I think the efficacy of the Daily Show is often because it's clearly a comedy show. It has a bias. We're editorializing. And hopefully people understand that when they watch it. It's like, oh, great. They're attempting this from a point of view. They're not firsthand reporters on the line. There's a green screen behind them. That guy used to teach improv comedy to me 5 years ago. I understand there's a bias there. I think the problem comes with, we watch Tucker Carlson, or, you know, God bless you if you do, but that's not a news source. It's been proven in the court of law that it's not a news source, and he brought that own defense. We pretend it is. Like, you talk to a grandparent, you talk to a parent, you talk to a friend back home, they're not going to be able to articulate like that's news and that's editorial. And we all pretend, and a lot of these networks all pretend like they get it, that, oh, well, as soon as you're watching Cuomo at night, you understand that that's an editorialized position and not the same as the news 2 hours earlier. But we blur it because we want just people to check in. And I think Americans aren't smart enough right now to understand that there are two sides. And that's because it's all being presented as content that you can eat up. I agree. Like, the BBC is so gosh darn bone dry, you know it's news. And Americans don't know how to give you anything that won't make a buck. And therefore, it all gets blurry. And nobody can parse whether they're getting fact or whether they're getting opinion.
It also feels especially problematic when a news source says, we are the only people you can trust. Everything else is fake news. Everything else is untrustworthy. Like, that to me feels where it becomes dangerous.
Yeah, you never get that with local news. It's just, we're action news. We're eyewitness news. It's never, fuck them over there.
I cannot believe your trust this suit to protect your grandmother at live events. my drama is pretty dope.
She's single and available. They're killing it. Republican comedy is clearly killing it. Everyone's loving the shows. He's got great turnouts. The president's live shows are very well attended. So as far as I know, they're killing it, the Republican comedy.
Literally, I think if you look at the numbers, 215,000, I believe.
Yeah, I think there's room for it. Anything that's going to take what's happening and make sense of it. But this all goes back to Jordan's point that, the line between news and opinion is so blurred that once you add satire to that mix, people are just trying to find stuff to reinforce their biases. And so there's people that, like, there's always, to the Onion's point, like, people have already talked about how it's so crazy now. How does the Onion even continue to do it? Like, because you'll read something and assume it's an Onion headline and then go, oh my God, no, that's actually real information. So, I don't know. I think that it's very hard to make a lot of right-wing jokes because there's so many things that are happening that the right pushes against that, in my opinion, are rooted in a lot of tragedy, pain, and suffering of a lot of people. You can be tragedy adjacent in satire, but I don't think the humor can exist within the tragedy itself. And I think that may be, a reason why.
I think it's directional too. I think, guess what? You don't punch down, you punch up. If you're a white guy like Ben Shapiro, and what, you're going to make jokes about people who want to come to this country and have a better life? You're going to make jokes about taking away healthcare from people? It's not very funny. I think Roy's right. You can't be that close to tragedy adjacent. You also can't be privy to it. And they can make jokes, but it's not funny when you're punching down. And I don't think they get the joke. I wondered this all the time because I did a show where I played a far right-wing character, and we often ask the question where, like, do people understand that we've heightened so far and that we are satirizing this? I think oftentimes we did, until Carter Page, who was under investigation for a Russian spy informant, walked into my office, had an hour-long conversation with me because he wanted to work on our show and wanted to pick out a desk. So the question is, do Republicans get the joke? I think they want to at least be on the payroll.